Welcome back to the AllSunDevils podcast. It's your host, Millard Thomas, and we got joining us, as always, the other host of this podcast, Donnie Druin. Donnie, how are you doing today, sir?
Millard is doing great. We were just talking before the podcast about playoff baseball is finally here, so that's really exciting. Unfortunately, none of our teams were able to get there in the postseason, but you know what? Hopefully, Arizona State can make some noise for us and make up for that.
Yeah, this is a great plug. Guys, if you don't already listen, go subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks. You can hear me do some D-backs talking as well, but my heart is with the Red Sox, even though I covered the D-backs. So hopefully the Red Sox are able to pull it out at Fenway. But we're here to talk a bigger game than even that, Donnie, if that makes any sense. We're talking about college football. We're talking about ASU versus UCLA, because on our last podcast, we talked a lot about, can ASU step up to the challenge? We've seen the story too many times. ASU starts the season hot. Maybe they crack a ranking, and then they always lose that big game to a Pac-12 team. This weekend, Saturday night, ASU versus UCLA. UCLA was ranked at the time. ASU was not. But now you look at the AP poll, top 25 Monday morning, ASU 22, UCLA nowhere to be found, because they took a smackdown to the hands of the Sun Devils, 42-23. Donnie, what was some of your biggest takeaways, your biggest takeaway? How did you feel watching that game? Because I can only tell you, I was ecstatic to finally see ASU slay the dragon.
Well, going into the game, we had a lot of questions for those guys, right? You already kind of prefaced it. Can the Sun Devils step up to the plate, whatever it mattered most? These are the kind of games that you need to win in order to make that push. Everybody around Tempe and everybody throughout the Pac-12 seems to believe that you can make. And they answered a lot of those questions on Saturday. I mean, we talked about Jaden Daniels and how it's going to come down to either him or Dorian Thompson-Robinson stepping up to make plays for their offense. And Jaden Daniels answered the bell phenomenally through a couple long touchdown passes to Ricky Pearson, our guy here on the podcast, best receiver on the ASU receiving corps for my money. And just the defense to shut out UCLA in the second half. I mean, it looked like it was going to be a shootout, all the way until the end. ASU's defense did not want any part of that, and that allowed the ASU offense, Jaden Daniels, and especially getting back a guy like Chip Trayanum, guys like Daniel Ngana and Rashad White to kind of carry the load and churn some clock in that second half, not allowing UCLA to get back the ball. Overall, I think it's probably the best 60 minutes of a game that we have seen Arizona State play to this point, and what a time for them to play their best game too, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at the penalties. ASU racked up 6 for 51, which is by their standards, it's actually below average. They average like 8 or 9 penalties a game. So to only have 6 for 51, phenomenal. And like you said, one of those questions, can Jaden Daniels win a game with his arm? Now, he technically won this game with his arm, but not in the down 2 touchdowns with 6 minutes left, we need a comeback kind of way. It was, I'm just throwing missiles all over the field, and you can see if you can try to stop me. Because like you said, Ricky Pearson had that 54-yard bomb that Jaden Daniels threw to him. And then he even did a little work himself where he just threw a little screen pass to Ricky Pearson. He took it over 60 yards to the house. He was dominant in that second quarter. And ASU, I thought this was going to be a shootout after watching that first half. I mean, it was 24-23, I believe, after the first half, because DJ Taylor ended that half with that muff punt return where I was like, Jesus. So this is what ASU is going to do tonight. They're going to not pick up penalties, but they're going to muff punts in their opponent's, red zone, and try to get points for UCLA before the half ends. And they did pick up points, the Bruins did. They ended up with a field goal before the half ended. But that second half, ASU's defense completely locked down UCLA, their offense. They didn't allow 1 point in the second half, and we saw the secondary really tune up, and really we saw that front seven pick up 4 sacks in that second half. I think they have 7 tackles for losses too that second half. I mean, it was really a complete effort by ASU in that second half.
Yeah, the turning point of the game, I want to say, is UCLA got down to Arizona State's 1 yard line. They were threatening to draw within a pretty close game. And 4th and goal, freshman linebacker Eric Gentry stops Dorian Thompson-Robinson dead in his tracks to get ASU the ball at their own 1 yard line. Actually, I believe it was at their own 4 yard line, because the Sun Devils then marched 96 yards down the field for a touchdown to kind of, cap that game and prevent any hopes of a Bruin comeback. So a big play by just a freshman linebacker who, by the way, had to step in for Kyle Swelly, who was ejected for targeting at the very
Always.
beginning of the fourth quarter as well. So he'll miss the first half of the game Friday night versus Stanford. But I mean, it looks like Eric Gentry could easily replace him in the first half. And granted, Sueli is a team captain. He will definitely be missed on the field, but Gentry showed a lot of promise last week, and I think throughout the entire season as well.
Yeah, I think we need to fix that targeting call because I get the intention of it, but I don't like seeing guys get ejected for one play. And like it was like a bang play that Kyle Sawali did. Like the dude was so low, like he there was nothing he could do to avoid the kind of hit he was going for.
He was already sliding, and it's like the problem with it is that like you're slowing it down and you're taking minutes to slow it down and like overanalyze something that just happened and like you said, a bang play, And if it was like a super egregious hit, I definitely understand it. I understood the 15-yard penalty because sure, DTR was sliding. It was a little bit late. I get it, whatever. But to entirely throw him out for that, and it's not just a one-time thing. I mean, it's the third time Arizona State has had a guy ejected for targeting throughout the game. And that's a problem all over the landscape of college football as well. So, it's not just one certain case where it's like, okay, you got to go and, just look at it because some people are complaining. No, it's across the entire country that we've seen. So, yeah, I definitely agree they need to get that fixed.
Yeah, get that fixed. I think you need 2 in the NFL before you get ejected. So hopefully college could help fix that. But like we were saying, the run stuffing, I should say, because you had Gentry. I think even the play before that, there was a run stuff on 3rd and goal. And ASU did that repeatedly throughout the night. Darren Butler, there was a play in the first half where he was just literally there waiting in the gap for the running back to come through on like 1st and goal, 2nd and goal. And he just absolutely manned up and stopped him. And I was really impressed with the defense in the second half. In the first half, it wasn't as impressive, but I think the ASU offense kind of bled in and played in tandem with the ASU defense in the second half because ASU, they punted on their first drive, but the next 5 drives, they scored on all of them. So when you think about something like that, when ASU's offense is going down and scoring time after time and time, that puts a lot of pressure on UCLA's offense, and that forced them to throw a lot more. And we know their quarterback really wanted to take off. ASU was getting killed a little bit by their quarterback taking off, and their running back had a pretty good game too. But the second half, they just pretty much, if it wasn't going to Greg Dulch, it wasn't going to anyone else. That dude had a great game, but in the second half, it was pretty much him or bust in the passing game. And ASU defense did a great job there, shutting down that passing game, and they really limited a Robinson, or Dorian Robinson, I believe that's his name.
Thomas Robinson,
yeah, Thomas Robinson. I don't know where I'm getting his name. Thompson Robinson. I'm looking
Dorian
at
Thompson Robinson.
Yeah, Dorian Thompson Robinson.
DTR is kind of the nickname everybody goes with. I think that's a lot simpler, TBH.
I can see why. Dorian Thompson Robinson. Okay, yeah. Dorian Thompson Robinson, he had a pretty good game on his legs, but he couldn't be matched by Jaden Daniels. I'm looking at some of these Pac-12 stats after that game. We might have to put a little bit more respect on Jayden Daniels as a passer. Yep. He currently leads the Pac-12 in completion percentage, passing yards per attempt, and he even leads them in rushing yards per attempt. So Jayden Daniels, I mean, is he the best quarterback in the Pac-12 right now? I mean, I feel at least a lot more optimistic with the passing game for the rest of the season after a performance like that.
Absolutely, yeah, and there's not bad quarterbacks in the Pac-12 by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, DTR is still a very, very good quarterback despite losing to Arizona State. I think Jackson Dart for USC, the freshman over there, I think he'll be something really nice here in the next couple of years. It's just other guys throughout the conference as well. But I mean, when you're looking at the best and who's playing the best football right now, I mean, look no further than Jayden Daniels because he's answered the bell and he's made throws when he's had to. He's made plays with his legs whenever he's had to, and he's been a very, very key component of Arizona State winning the first 4 out of 5 games when their MO is running the football, and utilizing their strengths in the running game, whether it be their big hogs up front at the offensive line or the running backs in the running back stable. Not a lot has been asked of Jayden Daniels to do so far, but what he has been asked of, he has done and done extremely well up until this point.
Yeah, he was 13 of 19 for 286 yards. UCLA ran the ball 52 times for 200 yards. ASU only needed to run 33 times for 177 yards. So I'll let you know how dominant ASU was on the ground. And Daniels, he has a great supporting cast. It's not like he has to do it all by himself. We've talked at length about the running backs, and it was nice to see Chip back out there. I mean, how did you think he looked in his first game back in action after missing couple games off. I didn't think he was as explosive as he normally is, but I thought he was just as powerful as he normally is. Like, he doesn't have to break off those 49-yard runs like we saw Rachaad White do in that third quarter, but he can still 5 yards, first and goal. He's going to bully through 3 defenders and get to that red zone, or end zone, I should say.
Yeah, I think he needed a little bit of a adjustment period to get his feet back underneath him. And, going against live competition, I'm sure he hasn't practiced a whole lot with the team throughout the last couple of weeks, at least in a full capacity. So, to kind of throw him out there, after his first taste of action and his last taste of action, was week 1 before he left against Southern Utah, and then coming back in week 5 against a very, very good UCLA team. Yeah, I think you can expect some kind of growing pains, but I thought he looked very well for, the amount of times that he carried the ball. And I thought, he provided that spark that you and I talked about last week. The ASU running game was missing so dearly. Yeah. Rachaad White is that home run hitting back, and both of us feel very good about Daniel Ngata whenever he has the ball in his hands. But whenever Arizona State just needed to keep trending the clock, whenever they got to those third and short, those third and goal situations, they needed that power back, right? The kind of bruising guy that carried the football, and pick up the yardage that they needed. And that's exactly what I thought Traynham provided them on Saturday, and that's exactly what he's provided for them all season.
I was really mad. I was trying to place one of those prop bets on DraftKings before this game because, look, I was like, Chip is back. I was like, one of these 2 running backs are going to score. I was trying to put, if I could put money on both of them to score, because I'm like, these ASU running backs literally score every week.
Love to score,
right now. Yeah, Rachaad White right now is tied for the Pac-12 lead in touchdowns, and DraftKings didn't have that prop bet. So DraftKings, if you could please let me bet on Rachaad White or Chip to score a touchdown, I would greatly appreciate that. But for once, we didn't just see the rushing attack make waves. We saw the passing attack make waves too, as we've been saying. Jayden Daniels, he had 4 completions, I believe, that went 47 yards or more, 2 of them to Ricky Pearson. The Pearson seems like he's kind of separating from the rest of the pack. There's been a couple games where it's like maybe LV Bunkley Shelton's the number 1 guy. Curtis Hodges always gets a few catches here. He probably should be around 70 yards a game, but so many penalties have taken away his receptions this year that maybe it's not as pretty as the numbers suggest. But it seems like Ricky Pearson is the guy right now for this ASU offense when you look at the passing attack, because not what he can just do with his game-breaking speed and size, the ability to separate from defenders, but we've seen him make a few passes this year. We've seen him take a handoff too. Like, this dude is just a dynamic weapon, and he just part of the long list of ASU weapons right now. When you look at Rachaad White, Chip, is Ricky Pearson right now the guy you think in that receiver room that Jaden Daniels is going to look to when it's 3rd and long and you need to get a play to keep moving the chains?
Almost definitely. And I think that it speaks volumes to what he's able to do before and after the catch. I mean, you've already put him out his speed and, how much that helps him whenever, it comes to, yak, yards after catch with the ball in his hands or route running, to get himself open. He's like a Swiss Army knife, and that's exactly what Herm Edwards had called him. Herm Edwards also called him the most consistent receiver out of that bunch last week, and I think that proved dividends this week. And I think, to your point, whenever Jayden Daniels does need a big play, whenever he does need somebody to get open, more oftentimes than not, the ball is going to Ricky Pearson, and there's not a whole lot the defenses can do about it. We've seen Pearson carry the ball a couple of times for the touchdowns, or at least big games. We've seen him pass the ball for a couple of touchdowns as well. He seems to do everything extremely well, and that's just something so great to have, especially for a really creative offensive coordinator like Zach Hill, who I thought called a very good game on Saturday night. All things considered, putting up 42 points on the road at UCLA is no easy task at all. So big props to him.
I mean, whenever they were taking those deep shots, I mean, Ricky Pearson, that second 54-yard catch he had, he was like literally like maybe 8 yards away from his defender by the time the ball dropped in his hands. Like, these guys were running wide open down the sidelines over the middle of the field. So it was a great game call, great game play calling by Zach Hill. But I do have my reservations and questions still a little bit with the passing attack, because don't get me wrong, Jayden Daniels looked amazing, but there wasn't a lot of adversity against him. And that's a credit to the offensive line, who didn't allow any sacks on Saturday. But are you like me? I still have a couple questions, because I still want to know, can Jayden Daniels, if there's hands in his face, if he's getting that pressure up the middle, it's chaotic in the pocket, can he still deliver those balls clean and on time? Because he was doing that Saturday night, but there wasn't really any pressure on him. It was a pretty clean game by the offensive line. And whenever those guys were streaking wide open, Jaden Daniels was able to dime them up. I'm still a little nervous. During those games where the offensive line might not be as crisp as they were Saturday night.
Oh no, definitely, and I think a lot of the knocks on Jaden Daniels still existed, right? One game doesn't exactly wipe away all of the problems that were facing him going into the game. We still haven't really seen him fit balls into tight windows. We still haven't really seen Jaden throw anybody open, like you're going to have to at the pro level. And, there's a lot of open guys to find at the college level, especially in the Pac-12 where offenses are, just scoring 30, 40 points a game, super easy. But and another point too, we haven't seen Jaden Daniels been asked to lead his team on like a game-winning drive, for example, where running to the ball is pretty much out of the question. Teams know that you're going to have to pass on all 4 downs whenever you're trying to move to 6. And what can you do? I think there's still questions about him. I still think there's a little bit of questions about the receiving core in general. We know there's a bunch of talented guys. Like you already pointed out, LV Bunkley Shelton is a presence. Brian Edwards is another big presence. I mean, just the list goes on and on of the capable guys that are almost wanting to get on the field and prove themselves. But Arizona State, that's not their MO. The ASU is going to run the ball 30 to 35 times a game. They're going to chew clock. They're going to keep your offense off the field, and they're going to ask Jaden Daniels to basically not turn the ball over. And that's why they've been so successful this year outside of the BYU game when they had 4 turnovers. So yeah, if and when Arizona State do find themselves in a situation where they're down by 10 with like 6 minutes left, they need a touchdown, they need something to get going. The running game is not cutting it throughout the game. Jaden Daniels is going to have to win it with his arm. Yeah, I'm still going to be a little bit skeptical, but I do think the performance against UCLA definitely helps at least ease those thoughts a little bit, right?
Yeah, and I think even though we do have these questions, I think we can both agree that he has gotten better week by week. This offense has looked better week by week. They started cleaning up the penalties. Like, really, this offense would probably look a lot better on paper when you looked at the numbers if they didn't have 18 penalties a game during those first 3 weeks of the season. So they could really clean up that area, which they were able to do Saturday night. Still 6 for 51, but a great improvement like we talked about. But this next matchup for ASU, they're going to face a Stanford. I think you wrote an article, maybe it wasn't you, but I think ASU is opening up as 11-point favorites against this Stanford team. And we look at them on paper, this should be an inferior opponent to ASU. I mean, if the point spread doesn't tell you that, I mean, just look at what ASU did to a ranked UCLA team. So now ASU in the top 20. This is the time not for ASU to rest on their laurels. You got the big win, but that could be a concern maybe just because you don't want ASU to all of a sudden come back to the pack and say, well, they beat the ranked team, but now they're looking too far ahead to their next big game, or maybe they're too hyped up and now they don't take this next opponent as seriously as they should. Are you scared for this Stanford matchup? Is this the quote-unquote trap game for ASU? I feel like it has to be, but still, I'm still probably rolling with ASU because even though they've blown games like the BYU game, I feel like they were the better team in that game. UCLA game, they played a pretty clean game and just demolished them, not wire to wire because that first half was close, but the second half, not even a contest, ASU over UCLA. So are you worried about this game against Stanford? Do you think it'll be a close game? What are your thoughts this Saturday?
Yeah, I don't think worry is the right word. I think cautious, I think might better describe it, especially with Stanford coming off of that huge upset over Oregon where, they took down the Ducks in overtime. And, even if they didn't complete the upset, I still think taking a team like Oregon to overtime shows a lot about Stanford and what they're able to do. And, catching that Stanford team riding high, off of that big upset win, hosting them on a short week, a lot of weird stuff happens. I mean, we're talking about the Pac-12. We've seen crazy stuff happen before. We're going to see crazy stuff happen in the future. And, like you already pointed out, 11-point favorites for ASU over Stanford. I think ESPN's Football Power Index has them listed at like 73% favorites to win the game or something like that. So everybody seems to think Arizona State is going to handle business. But I do agree. I do think ASU does end up winning the game. However, I'm not not to get into like a whole like betting thing, but 11 points is a lot, and they should cover it. But then again, like we're talking about a bunch of like 18 and 19-year-old kids. You can't really trust them to handle business like an NFL team week in and week out. But if I'm trusting anybody to have their guys ready, especially after such a big win, it's going to be head coach Herm Edwards. So, granted, I'm a little cautious about the Stanford matchup. Obviously, they're a good football team. They wouldn't be if they hadn't beaten Oregon last week. But at the end of the day, I still feel like Arizona State is the supremely talented team. I think they're the better coach team. They're playing at home. Hopefully, a lot of people are going to be packing Sun Devil Stadium on Friday night. And I think there's just too much going in Arizona State's favor to, work against them.
Yeah, and excuse me. Yeah, the game is Friday night, not Saturday night, if I said that. But ASU versus Stanford, it should be. We'll see if it's closely contested. And maybe we were just saying, maybe this is a trap game for ASU. Maybe this is a trap game for Stanford because they are coming off that big win against Oregon. And maybe they're feeling themselves just a little too much. So we'll see what happens there. I'm still probably going to roll with ASU in this one. I mean, Stanford's offense on paper, they are currently 11th in the Pac-12 in yards per game. In terms of points per game, they are 6th in the Pac-12 at 29 points per game. ASU averaging 34.4. So ASU's offense should be able to get it done. But are you worried that maybe their defense can't? Like when you look at the UCLA game, their first half and second half were probably two different tales. It looked like this was going to be a shootout in the first half. And then the second half, ASU's defense didn't allow UCLA to put points on the board. I think UCLA, 3 of the last 4 drives ended with a turnover on down. So when you're going into this matchup against Stanford, are you more believers in this defense from that first half against UCLA or the second half?
See, I would say second half, and I think that does play into the Stanford matchup, and here's why. I think UCLA, whenever they got the ball back, they were playing down, and UCLA loves to run the football, and I think the one common denominator of teams that have found success against Arizona State as of late have been able to run the football extremely well. We saw that a little bit with BYU whenever they beat Arizona State. We saw that in the first half of a couple of games, whether it be UNLV and then obviously UCLA as well. Whenever they got down in the second half, they started abandoning the run game a little bit, right? They started trying to throw the ball more. And that plays in the Arizona State's favor because they have a very experienced, a very talented secondary that's considerably, pretty deep as well. And here's where that comes in for Stanford. Stanford, I believe, is 11th out of 12th in the Pac-12 when it comes to rushing yards averaged per game, only besting Arizona. So they're basically dead last in the Pac-12 anyway, right? So I don't think Stanford is going to be able to establish the run early and kind of match Arizona State's physicality whenever it comes to running the ball early in the game, like BYU, like UCLA. And I think sooner or later, Arizona State is going to find themselves in like a 14-3, like 21-10 early lead in the game. And I think Stanford just might have to abandon the run and start throwing. And that I think that plays right into Arizona State's hands because, I just said the secondary and how good it's been. So, if you're constantly throwing the ball against Arizona State, you're going to pick up first downs here and there. You are going to find chunk plays. It is college football. It is the Pac-12. But at the end of the day, this is very much a bend but don't break defense. So I certainly trust the secondary to get the job done, especially if the Sun Devils are going to keep up the pass rush like they have been the last couple of weeks as well.
Yeah, I think that U of A rushing total is going to start to tick up too because I'm happy to announce I'm the new starting running back for U of A. I went to tryouts and I made it as a walk-on. Yes, everyone, thank you for the round of applause, Donnie. But in all seriousness, U of A sucks, so I can't wait for that Territorial Cup. If you thought 70-7 was bad, in Tempe, if you thought 70-7 was bad, the way this offense looks right now, explosive, and that's why I'm going to be riding with this ASU team over Stanford. The 11 points, I'm not sure if they'll cover that. 11 points is a lot of points, but ASU, I mean, they ended up winning by 19 against a ranked UCLA team. So it's definitely not out the realm of possibility, especially like you mentioned. The stats for Stanford offensively aren't that nice. And ASU was probably the most susceptible in the run game against UCLA. Both their quarterback and running back both had pretty good games from a rushing standpoint. So that's probably the biggest weakness for this ASU defense right now. They can still come after your quarterback, sack you, tackle for loss, but sometimes when you blitz too much, there are little holes. If you could get past that first wave, sometimes that second level, there's not always a defender there, and you can make one man miss and take it to the house. So that might be the only thing that might worry me in this game. But like we were saying, Stanford basically dead last in the Pac-12 and running the ball. So I'm probably not too worried in that department. So I'm definitely riding with ASU in this game. Donnie, do you want to I don't think we've done this on the pod yet, but do you want to maybe give a prediction, a score for what's going to happen Friday night, not Saturday?
Oh, man. Okay. On the spot. Give me Arizona State. Give me Arizona State. Man, I'll go. Okay. I do think they cover 11. Give me like 38 to 17. 38 to
30,
17.
38-17. I'm looking. They beat Colorado 35-13. I'm gonna say I'm gonna go. I want to say 37-2, Donnie. So maybe we're right here. We're picking up a little connection here during these
I like
podcasts. But
it.
I'm gonna say 37-2. But I'm gonna say 21. I'm gonna say they
Okay.
actually do cover. I think this running game is just way too dominant. Honestly, like when I watch Chip and Rashad White, like I just feel like they're gonna both pick up 90 yards and a touchdown every game. They're so dominant. And then Jaden Daniels, like he didn't even have to do it this week. Jayden Daniels is usually running all over defenses, and this was really the first game he didn't have to. Jayden Daniels, I mean, he really didn't have to, and he still had 45 yards rushing, and that was a
Right.
low game for him. Like this man is averaging, I think entering the game was averaging like 70 to 80 yards a game, and he had 45 yards in this past game on Saturday, and that was actually below his average. So that lets you know how often and how dynamic Jayden Daniels is not just a passer, but as a runner too, and how much it adds to this offense. And when you look at ASU up and down, the offense is clicking right now. The defense seems to be clicking right now. And is there really any opponent? Who would you say you're most scared of right now, a few weeks into the
Ooh,
season from the Pac-12? Is it
okay.
USC? I probably feel like it might be USC. I would have said maybe UCLA before this game, but now I'm like, we took down UCLA in the Rose Bowl. It's like, what am I scared of?
Yeah. So I definitely think UCLA, talent wise, play this year was probably their toughest test so far. Games I'm still wary on for whatever reason. I still don't like the road trip to Utah. And Utah hasn't been exactly the team everybody thought they were going to be this year.
Mhm.
But I mean, for whatever reason, just like that road trip to Utah isn't exactly favorable. USC does scare me a little bit, but playing that game at home and seeing how USC has played as of late, and I think if those two teams come out and play their best football, I think Arizona State does beat them on their best day. Um, at Washington does make me a little bit nervous, and I know exactly what I said for Utah applies to them. Exactly not the team anybody expected out of them. A lot of holes missing on that. The typical veteran secondary you see out of Washington. Not stellar quarterback play up there right now, but still on the road. Surprisingly, though, I think the toughest test right now, based off of play, at Oregon State. I think the second to last
Mm.
game of the season, they travel at Oregon State. And Millard, I'm not sure if you've seen those Beavers play this year. They look good. They look good. They find themselves at the top of the Pac-12 North standings right now, and I think that's a team that can give the Oregon Ducks run for their money whenever they play in the final game of the year as well.
That's a good call. Yeah, they lead their division 4-1 right now. So, admittedly, I haven't watched a ton of Beavers football. Probably as we get closer toward the end of the season, toward closer the matchup, I'll probably watch a little bit more. But right now, I'm probably just sticking with ASU for now. I guess Oregon State would probably have to be their toughest opponent since they have the best record in their own division. USC, I don't think they scare me a tough. Really, it's the games where they have to go on the road, like you said. And I don't really like ASU outside of Arizona too much, especially when the conditions aren't just right, when it's those rainy, wet kind of games like we just saw
Mhm.
Sunday night between Tampa Bay and New England. I think those kind of games are the ones that scare me the most whenever they have to travel to Oregon and play in the rain. I feel like they usually struggle in those games where you can't exactly get your hands on the balls, can't really get a good grip. But ASU, they got a dominant run game to be built like that. They could come after the passer with their pressure and front seven. So maybe this is the year where conditions don't really matter. And I think we're both in agreement after giving our predictions. ASU is going to have a big win Friday night. And of course, if you want to stay up to date with all the ASU's news, updates, rumors, events, coverage, anything you want, just head to allsundevils.com where the best reporters covering ASU are working around the clock.